This is about a different kind of a journey. This is about my TechnoJourney from Crayons to Creative Suite and back. Recently I came across a folder my mom had kept of some of my earliest writings. Crayons were the order of the day. You can see that I scurried through the coloring part. Forget the lines, I'll create my own, thank you. So I could get on to the more important writing and drawing part. As a child, I played around with my dad's typewriter from the 1930s. When I was in high school, I took an elective class in typewriting, without a doubt one of the most useful classes I have ever taken. Most of the rows had manual typewriters, but one row had electric typewriters. Every week we shifted over a row until it was our turn to use the latest technological wonder. Over the years, I served as secretary-treasurer for a number of volunteer organizations and worked in our family's construction business. Fast forward 30-plus years to 1990, when I started working at a parochial school in Pinellas County as the school secretary. We had an IBM Selectric. To change fonts, you change these little type balls. I used the typewriter a lot, and the 10-key adding machine and I became close friends. I arrived at school each morning around 6:15 and began my day by running off ditto sheets for some of the teachers using an A.B. Dick spirit duplicator on a relic from the 1960s. We used these until the fire marshal said we couldn't store the solvent in the office any longer. I also produced the school newsletter. By then we had graduated to an IBM wheel writer. Again, to change the font, you had to change the wheel. Then I took the typed original and created a stencil on an electro stencil machine invented in 1977. I wrapped the original around one side of a drum, fastened a stencil sheet to the other side. A moving optical head scanned the original, and wherever it detected ink, used an electric spark to burn a matching image into the stencil. Then I took the stencil, wrapped it around the drum of a Gestetner Mimeo machine, after having squeezed ink from a tube into the drum, and ran 200 or so copies of the newsletter. My mom recalled using the same type machine in the late 1940s and early 1950s. At home, however, I had begun using WordPerfect on a PC with a dot matrix printer, so when a new principal wanted to bring us into the computer age, I was game. During this time, I also began writing and producing dramas in our church. I learned to use PowerPoint, but this was in the days before screens in churches were common, so my husband and the choir director built what we called the Jumbotron. We mounted the projector on the backs of the pews and made do. I created hour-long PowerPoints, mostly to project words to songs, but also with slideshows and images to add meaning to the words. I learned to use the soundboard, mics, and monitors, and to create labels, badges, and buttons. I left the school in 2002 to pursue my writing, and I started writing for a newspaper. I met with 2 of the editors once, then never saw them again until 2 years later. I filed articles and photos by email, took my own photos with an Olympus digital camera, ran them through Photoshop to crop and size, then emailed them off. Eventually, this led me to a master's program at the University of Alabama, where we learned to produce webcasts and podcasts, in addition to honing our skills in more traditional print formats. Backpack journalism is one term used. We learned to do layout and InDesign, and my creative wheels began turning. When I went to Alabama, I began my first blog, thinking this would be a way for me to stay in touch with family and friends. I loved blogging, posting photos and slideshows. Eventually, I began 4 other blogs. And I text people, and I use the MapQuest navigational app and the Kindle app on my iPhone. When I came home from Alabama, I was so excited about creating videos and using Creative Suite's InDesign to create all sorts of material. I bought a Mac as a graduation present to myself. But we had used iMovie 6 in Alabama, and my new Mac had iMovie 8 on it, which was so different I couldn't figure out how to use it. I had really enjoyed making videos in Alabama.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
I was not happy to not be able to figure out how to use iMovie 8. But other writing ventures took my time, and after a couple of attempts to use it, I gave up. Later, I discovered a whole lot of people were so upset with the changes, they created a site with info on how to use it. And that's what I used to create this presentation, but I know I need to upgrade to iMovie 11. My blogs? Well, in Alabama I discovered that very few of my family and friends understood blogs. Some of them would read posts if I copied and emailed them to them, but the keeping in touch part didn't and still doesn't quite work. I keep them up anyway because writing is my way of making sense of the world. Multimedia production is a lot of work. I have spent hours on projects that ran maybe 5 minutes max, and the optimum time people really will watch something these days, provided they find it entertaining of course, is about 2 to 3 minutes. Plus I see a lot of visual fireworks and not much solid content. So I have found myself returning to the words themselves. There are still some people out there who are hungry for words combined in ways that delight the ear, pique the mind's interest, and help make meaning out of life. I don't use crayons anymore, but you can see I still use color. Still, it is very important that our new teachers know how to use these tools, and I have discovered that many of them have very little knowledge of even how to format text in Microsoft Word. I use Blackboard a lot, have incorporated blogging into my writing assignments, and look forward to learning about blogging. But if there's such a thing as post-technoism, maybe I'm entering it, coming full circle, as it were.